photography and the law. Basically, you want to make sure you've got permission. So let's talk about what exactly you need permission for. You must be aware permits are required to take certain types of photo and video, and even in some cases photography is banned. For example, if you've ever noticed at the airport when you're collecting your bags, there's signs all around the place that you can't use a camera or use your iPhone to take pictures. There's some protected facilities as well, especially military facilities, where they're very anti-photos of any kind taking place. At risk is fines, or in some countries even jail. I've worked in the Middle East where we did have a guy actually get accidentally jailed for taking pictures of an oil pipeline. For terrorism purposes, they're very wary about anybody taking pictures of certain facilities. So be aware you can incorporate fines, even jail time. Okay, let's talk about examples of commercial photos that require permits. Now, by commercial, I mean any sort of photo or video that's being used for a business or is going to be sold in some sort of way. So commercial photos. You might be working for a company, you might be taking photos that are going to be used in a book or being used for a commercial project. They would be considered commercial photos or video. People. You need the release form. If you're going to photograph people, you need agreement to use their image. So that's why you can't walk along the beach photographing strangers. If you're doing field work, you've got to be careful if you're taking a scenic shot, if you've got people in the photo. Technically, you need a release form with permission to use the image, their image, for your desired purpose. Logos on products, buildings, or vehicles. If you've ever noticed on TV shows, often they blur out the logo of the car, for example, or a product on the table, or they turn it so you can't see the label. Unless that product or company is a sponsor of the show, you'll tend to see logos blurred out because it's considered their intellectual property and you're gaining in a way of using their product in your photo. Permission to use certain facilities or locations, like I was saying, and this includes, believe it or not, parks and marine parks. You need permission to use the location for commercial purposes, and that includes the city as well. If you're shooting around the city, you should be getting permission to use the various buildings. Permission to get close to marine mammals. Technically, you're supposed to stay a certain distance away from marine mammals, dolphins, whales, for example. If you need to get close to get some close-up shots, technically you're supposed to get a permit in order to do so. Drone photography and video. Drones are an increasingly common tool for conducting fieldwork, and there's a range of rules that you need to abide by when using a drone, and I'm going to cover those in a minute. Copyright is something else to be aware of. Basically, this is enforced by Copyright Act 1968. In a nutshell, if you create an image, you own the rights to that image. So if you're taking a picture of a mural, and again it comes down to a product logo, you're infringing somebody's copyright of that image. Now this is if you're going to use it for commercial purposes. The exception of the rule is when the photographer is hired by a person or business to create the image. In such case, the image belongs to whoever hired the photographer. So what this means is if you're working for a company, even as a volunteer generally, and you're taking photos, generally the copyright of those photos or video will belong to the person that's hiring you. And if you photograph a logo or an image made by someone else and use it for commercial purposes, you're infringing their copyright and there can be penalties. Drone photography. So the Civil Aviation Safety Authority, CASA, is the one that sets the rules for use of drones. If you're using them for commercial purposes, you need what they call a remote pilot license. In general, with drones, but you're not allowed to fly higher than 120 meters. You need to stay 30 meters away from people. You mustn't fly over people. You must fly one drone at a time. A pretty talented person if you can fly more than one at a time. You need to maintain visual contact, so you need to be able to see your drone at all times. Don't record people without consent. As we were talking about before, you need a waiver. If you've got a drone that's 250 grams or higher, you must be 5.5 kilometers from an airport. You must fly only in the day and not in cloud or fog. And you mustn't interfere with emergency operations. So if there's an accident and there's fire engines and ambulances or police there, you mustn't interfere with their activities. There could be helicopters coming in, and the last thing they want is a drone flying around. And we saw this in the news with the bushfires. There was drones getting in the way of the water bombing helicopters and planes. And last but not least, do not create a hazard to aircraft, person, or property. Planning. So planning your fieldwork, the factors to consider are where the photograph's being taken, location, and that's going to dictate, you need to do your research on what permits might be needed, who and what will appear in the photo, people, children, private property, logos, etc. Be aware of copyright, again, getting permission. What is the purpose of the photograph? Is it commercial, research, documentation, art, etc.? And then research the permits and waivers that you need, and it's pretty easy to do online. Photography and the law. In summary, remember, certain types of photography requires permits or consent forms, otherwise fines or even jail time can ensue. Make sure you do permit your research in plenty of time before you do your fieldwork. So apply for your permit with plenty of time to get it, because some permits take a bit of time to get. So that's it in summary. Just be mindful and get those forms and apply in plenty of time to get your permit. Okay, so there you go. See ya.